Hey everyone, welcome to our pre-episode YouTube.
That's right. Yes, it's exciting.
You may notice something different. New room.
It is. Did you see that? Did you notice?
Yeah.
I
did.
This would be at the time of recording, my classroom.
At the time we were watching former classroom.
Yes. It's going well. Giving it up, devoting myself full time to Brains and Bibles. It's exciting. Bittersweet. Exciting. I love the kids. Teaching at school here. If you didn't pick up on that, but so it's gonna be sad to get leave it behind. But there is much more ministry to do and to make new relationships and things. Anyways, I have this timeline over here. Nate, you've been checking it out a little bit.
It's a big timeline. Not just a target, it's a timeline.
Circular, which is different than a lot of others.
Yeah.
I love it.
We've been making lots of comments about it. So you have discovered that the flood date is wrong.
Well, that's the way I figured it.
The way you figured it.
But 105 years off.
But you used math.
I did use some math.
And added just numbers together.
Yeah, I did add lifespans together.
It's about 100 years. So, but it still has its value, even if all the dates aren't perfect.
Right.
Which, some things are going to be up for debate anyway, because, it has, China on here. We don't really know for sure
exactly when they started.
Our worldview would teach that obviously China started after the flood.
Right.
It would have been from one of the descendants from the flood.
Yes.
No, that's showing Jephthah. You think it was probably Seth or Shem. Shem.
Yeah.
That's Seth. The other dude, Shem.
But
once how do you that's pretty hard to prove.
You got to go to Genesis 10.
Pretty hard to prove.
The dispersing of the nations, and you understand that all those names are cities and nations. So then you kind of have an idea of where they spread to,
kind of where they went,
and then you kind of use your imagination after that because they kept spreading.
Yeah.
So there was wars and everything else too. So it is difficult to say. It's fun to look at. You can see the kings and prophets together over here.
So that's what I'm going to say. That's one of the best values of a timeline like this, though. Is not some of the speculation, but some of the things that are facts. So you can kind of see which prophets were living long, which kings, and that sort of thing. So at a glance you can look, when did so and so prophets? When was this book? And you can kind of look and get an idea. So.
Right. I mean, you have about 400 years after the flood. You're in the middle of Abraham's life.
Yeah.
You'll go another 400 years.
And Shem is still alive.
Yeah, Shem's alive
during Abraham.
So you have a guy that Abraham could have talked to Shem, in theory, and talked about what life was like before the flood. Mm-hmm. He lived it. That's interesting. 400 years after Abraham's life, roughly, you have Moses. That's pretty interesting. And then about let's see, about 1,000 years. Maybe a little less than that. About 500 years. You have David, King David. Yeah, right. When you start to look at this stuff, you're like, man. And then it's about 1,000 years after David's Christ. And so you look how close things are. I think it's so fascinating.
Yeah, but I guess in this we'll probably cover this and on our topic we're going to be getting to. But you can see how some of the things were passed down. Abraham was still alive when Shem was here. Well, he definitely would have known some stuff.
You would have known some stuff.
So, it's very, possible that some of that stuff was passed down. You can take that leap pretty easy. If I had a great-great-great-great-grandson, I'd probably say howdy.
Perhaps. At least send a birthday card,
Yeah, maybe.
A birthday scroll back in those days.
Scroll, so... anyway,
You're 120.
We should get started before we start rambling about timelines. Yeah. We got new digs. Hopefully not distracted too much, but we're about ready to get started with our podcast.
That's right. Here we go. We're gonna bring in our podcast people in 3, 2, 1. That sounded refreshing.
It was refreshing. I'm almost done with 40 ounces of caffeinated beverage. All right, welcome to Brains, Bibles, and Beyond. I am Nate Day, and this is Joel Willoughby.
Hello.
And we're your hosts for this podcast.
That's right. We are going Brains, Bibles, and Beyond, but today really just focusing on the Bible so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little beyond.
Well, you can check out my ministry, brainsandbibles.com. You can check out Nate's ministry, Think Like Christ, or thinklikechrist.org.
.org, yeah.
Yes.
And don't forget to like and subscribe, share and comment, and give us a review of some sort. That would be handy. Also, if you have any questions, you can send those to podcast@thinklikechrist.org. Whatever your question is, comment is, we'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to comment. Please comment and share on our YouTube or on share our podcast on Spotify or Anchor, iTunes, wherever you listen.
Yeah, we want more people to learn. Just get it out there.
Yes. All right. So today we're going to take a little bit different approach than what we normally do. But basically, today's episode will be mostly an introduction of what we're going to be working on.
Right.
The fact is, a lot of people have doubts on the Bible, the accuracy of the Bible, the trustworthiness of the Bible, so forth. So we want to address some of these, and that's kind of what we want to talk about here today. And a lot of these arguments, or objections to the Bible, or doubts about the Bible. Some of them are legitimate questions. Some of them are completely ridiculous. Some of them are, just somebody trying to nitpick something, and factually they're dumb. But then there are good ones, that people legitimately have some questions. So we don't want to sound like we're making fun of people, even though sometimes we might. But we want to generally answer some of these questions. So some of these, I'm just going to kind of go through some of the more popular ones that I've heard. A lot of you may have some other questions, and that's great. If anyone does have some questions on can I trust the Bible, or this is something I saw or heard, and I'm not quite sure how to answer that, and
seems to be a contradiction.
Maybe it seems to be a contradiction, or there's something here that causes a little doubt. Maybe it's something like the timeline. Well, like we were just talking a little bit ago, China's oral history predates the flood.
They say unbroken history.
Right? So that's something that could maybe cause a doubt. The little things like that, and we can go over those things. So if you have some questions, something like that you would like an answer to, send it, put it in one of our comments, send us an email, and we can make a special show about it if we get a request. So
if.
So first thing, this one we I think everyone's probably heard this. And I know we're going to go over it in more detail later, because this is actually one of the things that you specifically want to cover on on the can we trust the Bible question. But this idea that we got the Bible by basically a giant game of telephone.
Right.
Now, for those of you who don't know what telephone is, basically you get a group of people in a room, and I whisper something in somebody's ear, he whispers something in someone's ear. Time it gets 20 people down the line. What that guy hears has nothing to do with what I said.
Completely different. It's always fun.
Generally, I don't know if I've ever seen it not be completely different. And it takes about 3 people to really get messed up. And so there's this idea that that's how we got our Bible. That just for the last 6,000 years, people have whispered things into each other's ears. Or maybe it was written history, but we just copied the copy of the copy of the copy of the copy for 6,000 years with nobody proofreading or checking or going back to anything else. So that's the idea.
Right.
So how do we answer that? Just in a nutshell. I know we're going to get more detailed, but just give us a little bit here.
Yeah, the easy answer, which I know is not satisfactory for quite a few people, but you just say that, God took care of it. God was involved. It wasn't just people. This is His word that is foundational for how to live, to have hope, to have faith, to have salvation. Things like that. So of course God cared enough to make sure it wasn't messed up. So that's a very simplistic approach. but there's a lot of truth there, and it truly it is good enough, really. But so then you can even think from a human standpoint, like let's say you just take God out of the equation, you just look at it from a human standpoint. You can think about like how there's libraries of books that don't actually have an error in them. A human being, group of humans, could get together and make a book that is actually quality, that has no contradictions in it. So what's the big deal? Like, why is it so crazy that we can have a Bible that has no contradictions? There's a lot more I want to say about all that, but I'll just...
and that specific topic of the oral tradition, we will discuss that later. But you also kind of touched on another one of the objections. It's written by a human. I mean, that's obviously can't be good then.
Yeah. And there is some truth to that in the fact that we all are messed up. We all have problems where none of us are perfect. And so you go, wait a minute, so beings that are imperfect are supposed to have made a perfect thing? And so there's a struggle, there's a tension there. And I get that. But the idea is that we were not left alone. There's also divine authorship.
But every other book that we do trust was all written by humans.
Right.
So it's a very inconsistent argument.
You'll have people reading books to figure out how a book made by people doesn't work. And it's like, well, what if the book you just read doesn't work then? It's kind of a self-defeating.
Logically
argument.
It just makes sense. But it is something that can cause doubt, and that will kind of get addressed with our other topic anyway. So another one we hear a lot is there's just lots of translations. How can this be true when all these different Christians everybody has their own translation, and they're all different. Clearly it's not, you can't trust it because they're all different.
Yeah, and so this it's one of those things. I actually have a few episodes on this on the YouTube channel, and it's how do we get so many translations? I think there's 3 episodes on that. I can provide a link in this video here, but. So in a nutshell, I'll try to, 3 episodes, right? I'll try to summarize this, a big idea. With all these translations, they all come from these original language manuscripts. And if you were to add all the things that could be added, because there's little differences, or subtract all the things that could be subtracted, you still have the full gospel, you still have every doctrine. There's absolutely no change in the way you would live for God to glorify and worship Him. So none of those things change. And so then you think, well, what are all these differences? A lot of them, most of them are simply, it's just crossing a T, dotting an I, things like that. Very simple. Yes. So not actually a big deal. On the surface, it can seem like it's dramatically different. But a lot of times, we just get used to proof texting. We're used to using this exact verse to prove this exact thing over here. And when we go to different translation and we don't have that exact wording, we don't have something so similar, we think, oh, this must be bad, or why is there a contradiction? Yeah, sometimes it's just moved, or just read the whole Bible and you'll find that there's support for every doctrine all through the Bible, Yeah.
So, but I mean, that's another thing, and you do have 3 YouTube videos on this. So
yes.
I do recommend if that's something that like you got some more interest in, more curiosity on, check out Joel's YouTube channel, Brains and Bibles, on YouTube, and there are 3 episodes dedicated specifically to how do we get all our translations.
Right. It starts getting into what they call textual criticism, just a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit. And so if you know what that is, you might get happy, and if you don't know yet, you will get happy. Check it out.
No, it's good stuff. All right, so then this one, this is the kind of the crazy one. So the conspiracy theory one, and there's different versions of this in different ways. But this is one I have heard before. That I think they got it from like the History Channel or something like that, where somebody made a documentary that proved the Bible is a giant conspiracy.
Coming soon, we now have the whole truth.
And so basically, there's something that goes along like this lines. Generally, it's some vague time in the past, generally around like the time of Constantine, and a whole bunch of different monks decided that we're going to change the Bible.
Right.
And generally it focuses on the Greek New Testament. And so a bunch of these guys get together. They find the manuscripts that are in existence at the time, and they sneak in and they make certain changes to all the different manuscripts. And they never get caught, and they go and they put them all back and they hide and they do this, and it changed our Bible. I don't know what the point of the change is, but they've done something that causes us now that we can't trust it. That at face value is just asinine, because there's 6,000 known manuscripts of the Greek New Testament, and dating back to 120 AD ish, 120 180 ish, somewhere there.
Right. Yeah, that's good enough.
Yeah, ballpark, right? I mean, so
right.
So 2,000 year old manuscripts. So this would have been a few hundred years after that. They discovered to go find these and then change them all. On top of that, you would have had all these. The early church, when Jesus said go out to all the world and preach the gospel, they actually believed their Savior and did what he said.
Right.
And so they did. And so all these early manuscripts also would have been put in every other language right at the beginning. And so not only would they've had to now change all the original Greek ones, well, not the original Greek ones, but early Greek manuscripts, they also then would have had to change in all these other languages, which I don't know how many there were.
Yeah, so, all together, this is just the New Testament. We're talking 20,000 plus.
Yeah,
crazy number.
And then on top of that, you would have had commentaries written by the early church fathers, which you could basically almost reproduce the entire New Testament in, just from their commentaries. And so they would have to go find all those and change all them, all while never being caught.
Right.
And it's just, it's absurd. There's no way it could even happen. But there are things like that. You'll hear these random conspiracy theories. They'll make a movie about it in Hollywood. They'll throw something on, History Channel. And, it's interesting and well done. But
looks good.
But they don't even make sense or hold any weight. So, but that is something that can cause some doubt. But if you just stop and think, it really doesn't make any sense. It's even possible. And then the big one, this contradiction. The Bible's full of contradictions.
Oh, I hear that more than anything else.
Completely full of contradictions. You can't trust anything. It's full of contradictions.
I'll say this too. A lot of times I have these conversations with people that are more atheistic, agnostic, or something like that. And they'll say the Bible's full of contradictions. Can't trust it. I'll say, well, can you show me one?
Yeah. Well,
can you show me one? We'll talk through it. A lot of times, just like oh, it's just it's all over. It's all over. Like, okay, can you show me one? Let's deal with it. And so it's a hard time. Sometimes they will, and sometimes people just share a link with me. Like we have a website here that we looked up.
Yeah.
And it'll be something like this.
Yeah.
And they'll say, well, see, I don't need to talk to you about it. Just go to this website. It's going to change your life.
So in the spirit of discussion. And just wanting to really address current ideas, we went ahead and looked up atheist.org, and we wanted to find some of the top contradictions that atheist.org has on there. So they have a list. It's a nice website, atheist.org. You can hit the activism, I think, right? Activism tab, and down at the bottom it says resources. You can click on there, contradictions of the Bible. Right. And that's where we're at. And so we went on there. Some of them are they're not even close to contradictions. They're just ridiculous. But there are some legitimately good questions, right? And so we kind of picked the best ones, ones that could actually appear to be a contradiction. And so we're gonna discuss those, because these are things that could legitimately cause somebody to question or wonder. So. Yes. The first one is seeing God. So I'm going to read right here off their website. This is what they have on their website. Seeing God. I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. This is from Genesis 32:30. And, of course, that's Jacob. He's wrestling with God, and the angel of the Lord wouldn't let go, the story. And he gets his hips smote, and he walks around the rest of his life. Anyway, clearly, I've seen the face of God, right? Then you go and look to John 1:18, and simply says, no man has seen God at any time. Well, hey, seems like a contradiction, right?
It does seem that way.
If that's the only 2 verses you ever read in your Bible, seems like a contradiction. But is it?
Mm-hmm. So the beautiful thing here is that the Apostle John sits down to write this perspective of the gospel. He has already spent a few years with Jesus. He's seen all the miracles. He believes. In fact, he even says in this gospel, the whole point of me writing, the purpose of this book, is so that you will believe. Okay, believe what? Well, believe that Jesus is God, and that he is actually taking care of the problem of sin, through his shed blood on the cross and things. And he talks about the resurrection. I mean, there's no point in John, the Gospel of John, that you would think that he does not believe this is God. This is the whole point. And so when he says, no one has ever seen God, the only God who's at the Father's side, he has made him known, okay, we have to understand that he's probably not just saying that God in any form has never been recognized. That would not be it. Now, Jacob had a really cool thing. He wrestles with the angel of the Lord, which would be Jesus Christ himself, I'd say. It was definitely God, though. He says, I've seen God face to face, so he named the place Peniel, which means face of God. But was that God's face in his full glory, his true form? No, it was not. So it was true form. That's 1 Timothy 6:16. He dwells in unapproachable light. In 1 Kings 8, he dwells in a thick darkness. He's always surrounded by these cherubim described in Ezekiel 1 and Ezekiel 10. Fantastic creatures and things. There's all sorts of things going on around the throne room of God even. No one has seen that. No one has seen it. Not God in his true, full glory. And I think of if I were to take the stage as an actor and I were to dress up as somebody else, it's still me. You point and say, there's Joel right there. But I might have the pillow in the back for the hunch, some makeup on, some hat, a cloak that's kind of disguising me a bit. It's still me, but I have this veil over me. So you don't really see me as I normally am. So the same thing with Jesus Christ. He has a veil over his glory. He was not him as he normally would be. He became flesh. He became a servant. All that sort of thing. So I think that I can see where there's a confusion there. But even by John's own words, there's no way he actually thinks that no one would ever see God in any form.
No,
it's not there.
Jesus just lived with him for 3 years. It doesn't even make any sense.
Right.
And then we have the proof of, this whole idea, John, they tried to kill him. How many times did they try to kill John? I don't know. But one of them was getting boiled alive, right?
Right.
And he still would not renounce that Jesus is God, right? Mm-hmm. So clearly you can see God.
He had some kind of understanding there.
Yeah, and it was something that, he held to. So next one would be human sacrifice. Now this is a legitimate question. A lot of people have this question. I remember,
absolutely.
I remember as a youngster, was 12 years old, probably reading through this for the first time. I think when I was 11, I decided I was going to read through the whole Bible. It took me 4 years, but so I was probably about 12 when I got to Judges, I would guess. And I remember reading this for the first time, that's interesting,
It's a little bit odd.
A little interesting, and so I can see, this is legitimate one here. Human sacrifice. So Leviticus, I'm just going to read what they have for their contradiction on the website, just so you can get the idea of the argument, and then we're going to actually show you what the Bible really says, because they actually change and write into it what isn't really there. Leviticus 18:21. Thou shalt not let any of thy seed pass the fire of Moloch, neither shalt thou profane the name of thy God. Okay, straight up, this is in the law. Don't kill babies.
Yeah, it's a pretty bad deal.
I still hold to that today.
Right.
Don't kill babies.
Yes.
I think baby killing is wrong. It's a sin. Don't do it. Okay, we agree. Don't kill babies. Bible clearly says that. All right, so then this is their contradiction that they find.
They kind of spin their own little tale here.
They do. So they get the gist of the tale, but they add stuff in that's not really there. But so you start off with just parentheses already. So this is stuff that they're kind of writing in. A little bit of a paraphrase. In Judges, though the tale of Jephthah, who led the Israelites against the Ammonites, is being told. Being fearful of defeat, this good religious man sought to guarantee victory by getting God firmly on his side. There's all kinds of bad things in this sentence. So,
right.
So he prayed to God, if thou shalt without fail deliver the children of Ammon into mine hands, then it shall be that whatsoever cometh forth of the doors of mine house, first of all, nobody talks like this, to meet me when I return in peace from the children of Ammon, shall surely be the Lord's, and I will offer it up for a burnt offering. All right.
Right, there you go.
And then we skip down here. The terms were acceptable to God. This is one of the things that is not in the Bible, but they write it in there. Terms were acceptable to God. Remember, he is supposed to be omniscient and know the future. So he gave victory to Jephthah, and the first whatsoever that greeted him upon his glorious return was his daughter.
Which was a bummer. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a bummer. As God surely knew would happen. If God is God, true to his vow, the general made a human sacrifice of his only child to God. All right, so there you go.
So yeah,
what do we do with that? Because face value, hey, I'm going to offer whatever comes out. His daughter comes out, and he's got to fulfill his vow. God knew his daughter was going to come out, right? I mean, so.
Right. Yeah. So a few
things.
Wrong things here. So first off, yes, it's clear that God says don't kill babies, and with Molech in particular, I mean, it was a very violent death. Passed through the fire. They're taking these babies and throwing them in, to hot coals and things, and they're pounding drums to not hear the screams, and I mean, just a horrible situation. God says, I want nothing to do with this. This is not good. So then you have the book of Judges now. Judges has a reputation. What happened was after Joshua, things were good with Joshua, but then after Joshua, people stopped following God. They decided they're not going to lean into what God commands and his wisdom, but they're actually just going to do what they want, whatever they want, whatever's wise in their own eyes, Mm-hmm. And so here you have one of those recollections where the people were doing what they thought was right without consideration of God. And so really nobody does good in this situation. Nobody does. Well, God does, but you don't actually see much of God in this whole story. That's part of the issue. So you have these guys that were going to be, they already kicked Jephthah out of the town, bad situation there. He ends up being like the leader of some street gang living in a cave, and then, basically, and then they come up and say, hey, actually we need a commander for our army. And we see you're pretty good with organizing volunteers, the street gang. And so they say, well, why don't you lead us in battle? And so he makes some deals with them, and then he ends up doing it. Well, he wasn't raised in the Word of God and how to live for God, and obviously the town leaders weren't either. And so he goes out there and he does things, and he makes this vow. Well, God never says anything.
Never one time
there's
says
no record
that God accepted the vow,
right,
or is in favor of the vow.
He just says it. He's going out to war. He says this, and he does have victory. Well, God's going to give him victory anyways. And the whole point was he was judging the pagan nation. And he happened to use Jephthah to do that. So we can praise Jephthah that he had faith in God enough to know that God can give the victory, and that he would. And, that part was good. He is mentioned in Hebrews 11, which is saying something for him. But then he says, "Hey, okay, so whatever was the first thing to come out of the doors that lead to my house." So there would have been like an outer, field that could have been any kind of ox, sheep, whatever. Okay, he would have had some cattle. Yeah. So he was expecting.
Clearly, he didn't intend it for it to be his daughter. That's what he said.
Right.
All right.
He's clearly expecting some sort of animal, and in his mind, he's like, you know what? I don't even care if it's like an ox or something, even that big. I'm going to sacrifice whatever it is, And of course, sadly enough, as we've already said, it was his daughter that came out first, trying to, just have a happy time and celebrate her father.
And playing at timbrels and dancing.
Yes. Doesn't that sound wonderful? It does. And so, of course, God knows the future. Right. That has nothing to do with Jephthah making a bad decision, though, because God always knows things, and we still must choose or reject him. That's our choice, So
we still make bad decisions all the time.
All the time.
Even though God knows what's going to happen.
Right. Nowhere here does God approve of human sacrifice, which is kind of what they're suggesting. They're suggesting that God is approving of this human sacrifice. It's not happening.
And then approves it. Yeah.
And plus, in Leviticus 5, if he would have known of the Word of God, that would have really helped him out, because Leviticus 5 actually gives clear instructions through a few paragraphs there, but gives clear instructions on what to do if you realize that you've made a bad vow. Because sometimes we speak a little too quick. Think about Peter the Apostle, things like that. We speak a little too quick. We say things we shouldn't. And when you realize that following through with your previous promise is actually sinning against God, then Leviticus 5 had this whole thing they're supposed to do to get out of that. So they're not sinning against God.
But you think he really did follow through with the vow
I do.
And put her to death. So,
yep.
And I'm not sure on that, but, I mean,
and that's
very possible.
It's a big debate.
Well, and the only reason is, when he comes home, he tells his daughter, and then she asks if she can go off to have some mourning. So she goes off to the mountains and says, "Bewail her virginity." Basically, like, I'm never going to get married. Right. And then comes back, and then in verse 39. And it was so at the end of the 2 months that she returned to her father, and he carried out his vow with her, which he vowed. Mm-hmm. And she knew no man, and it became a custom in Israel. So basically the way that verse reads, she just became a nun and never got married. He just basically dedicated his daughter to God.
If that was the vow. If the vow was a burnt offering.
They may just not have followed
it. She's dead.
So I can get, I've heard both arguments and both things. So the fact is, though, it doesn't actually say he burned her. What it actually says is she just never got married. But she may never got married because she got burned as an offering. So it just doesn't actually say. But either way, he made a bad vow, and then there were consequences for it. At bare minimum, he has no grandchildren. Period. Because he either got put to death or never got married, and it was his only child. But the fact that this is not a contradiction, for a variety of reasons, never once in the story does God approve of this. Jephthah was, somebody who believed God, trusted God, made poor choices. There's several other people in the Bible, same things.
We have about 30 seconds left here. So
really?
with our podcast people, the time's been flying by.
All right.
So we're going to have to wrap it up here. This is just kind of an intro to this little series we're going to do. Can we trust the Bible? Can we trust it? I would encourage you, just if you have some sort of something you'd like to add, something to think through or to figure out, go ahead and just respond to us with some kind of comment or something.
Shoot us an email.
Yeah, and we'll take care of that for you.
All right.
All right, we'll talk to you again.
See ya. All right. Little bonus time for YouTube, or
here we go. Yeah, let's do a bonus.
All right, so I got one more here. Contradiction, power of God.
Ah, yes.
This is one that you wanted to do.
I like
it. Try to make it onto the podcast. With God, all things are possible. Matthew 19:26.
Absolutely.
Nothing like half a verse taken out of context.
Yeah, right.
All right, let's see the contradiction. The Lord was with Judah and drave out the inhabitants of the mountain. I love the word drave out.
Yes, lots of draving.
I don't. But could not drive out the inhabitants of the valley because they had iron chariots. Woo!
Yes. So, somehow God was able to destroy the iron chariots of Pharaoh in Egypt, along with also the 10 plagues before that.
Yeah, so the chariots of Pharaoh, though, he didn't just destroy them. He did it in style. The parting of the Red Sea.
Totally dismantling.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they get stuck in the mud. The Israelites walk through on dry ground. The chariots get stuck in the mud. Wheels are falling off.
Right.
People are screaming. Water crashing in. But
it's a rough situation.
These iron chariots, these are...
Right. I mean, he created
the whole universe. These must have been American-made iron chariots.
Yeah, right. American-made. You think about the power to create the whole universe, worldwide flood. There's all these things that, you're assuming to be true as you go through the Bible.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, the chariots of iron.
Hey, he got some chariots of iron. No. Can't stop that.
Okay, so first off, we got to address Matthew, okay?
Yeah.
So Matthew 19:26, red flag always when you have like 6 words. And like that's the main point. Mm-hmm. When you have the ... after the quotation mark, that tells you, what, I should probably read some more. Let me read some more of this. At
least read the whole verse.
At least read the whole verse.
Yeah.
At least. Okay.
If not more.
So with God, all things are possible. What is he even talking about? Okay. So this is, you have the rich young man that comes up. He's trusting in his own riches and things. A lot of the Jews would have a general understanding that if you were wealthy and healthy, you were righteous. You were good to go. Right.
Abraham.
Right. Yeah.
Job,
all these rich patriarchs.
You look back and clearly he was right with God. Look at that. He's got some camels.
So the disciples, they had this understanding, and so that's why they reacted in verse 25 when Jesus basically says, "There's no way a rich person can get into heaven on his own. Can't do it."
Can't do it.
Then the disciples, the jaw hits the floor. Who then can be saved?
How in the world can I get there then?
So then that's when verse 26 comes up.
Yeah.
He says, but Jesus looked at them and said, he's just like, how long is it going to take for you to guys get this? He looks at them first, okay? But then he says these powerful words here. He says, with man, this is impossible. So what's impossible? Salvation. Man can't do it on his own. Right. You can't do it with man. This is impossible. But with God, all things are possible. Mm-hmm. So what's the whole point of that passage? He's saying that God can save souls, man cannot.
Yeah.
Okay, so then they're pairing that up. It's a good thing
you do that because you can't stop a chariot.
Yeah, right. Yes, goodness. Indeed.
Okay.
So then they pair that up with Judges 1:19. Now, remember, Judges, context, right? This was not a good time in Israel's history. No. Not a good time. And they were not doing what was right. They were failing to trust in God. They were being wise in their own eyes. Okay, so knowing that that's where Israel's at right now, then we look at this and we see that God has given them tons of victory. Mm-hmm. And even around this verse, you have victory. In verse 18, right before it, Judah also captured Gaza with its territory, and Ashkelon with its territory, and Ekron with its territory. These are powerful places with powerful people. And even just to skip 19 real quick and go to verse 20, you have Hebron, which is also called Kiriath Arba, the city of Arba, was given to Caleb. And he's just like this one guy. He runs up.
Machine.
Yeah, Arba was the greatest man of the Anakim. You have the Anakim there, the sons of Anak. Who can stand before the sons of Anak? These are the guys that when Caleb and Joshua spied out the land originally, the other 10 spies go, whoa, these guys, in the same exact place too, by the way. And they said, there's no way we can do it. The whole nation turned. Caleb, he's like, no, God can do anything. And so he runs up and takes the mountain himself. But we back up to verse 19. There's something different here. It says, and the Lord was with Judah. That's good.
Yeah.
And he took possession of the hill country. That's good. but he could not drive out the inhabitants of the plain. That seems strange. Is there a reason? Because they had chariots of iron. And so that becomes the key. So then you think, well, to be biblically consistent, I know that it's not about a limitation of God's power, so it must be the limitation of the people. What was the limitation in the whole book? They were faithless. They were backing off from God. So then I think of even Peter walking on the water. And Jesus says, come out, and he does. He starts out well, just like Judah did here. Starts out well. But then what does he do? He takes his eyes off Jesus, and he looks down over here at the wind and the water. And he goes, oh no, I can't do it. And that's when he starts sinking. Yep. After having walked on the water.
You take your
Jesus
eyes
right
off
there.
Of Jesus
yes.
and put it on your distractions.
Yes.
And that's what happened.
So here you have the same situation where they're focused on the tools of the enemy. And we're actually thinking that, even though God's given all this other victory, can't do this.
So the application to us is not that this is a contradiction,
right.
But the application to us is simply this. We need to keep our eyes on God and not the things around us. So often in our lives, we'll have a great spiritual victory, and the next thing you know, you fall, or you sin, or the temptation comes, or something catches you off guard because you're not on guard. You start looking around, you're doing this or that, or
right.
Peter's out walking on the water. I mean, he's walking on the water. The next thing you know, he's sinking, calling out for Jesus to help him and save him. But 2 seconds ago, he's walking on water, like crying out loud. This is the same thing. These guys just conquered the mountain, right? But now you look down there, oh man, those pesky chariots, and they had a moment of doubt, and that trips you up. Mm-hmm. So. It's unfortunate, and that's like the whole story of Judges. I mean,
right.
That's
what gets worse from there.
And that's what gets them in trouble. Here at the beginning, they're conquering the land, but so many times they were stopping short. We got all this. Well, I don't really need that. That's land. Or, those guys got chariots. Or, I don't want to do that. And they left pockets of people all around the promised land
right.
that were not supposed to be left. And, next thing you know, they're falling into idolatry. All the things that God warned about, kill everyone. Otherwise, drive them out. Otherwise, you're going to fall into their sin. Right. Do not start worshiping their gods. And they did.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
And they fell short. And all of Judges then is, let's go worship other idols. And they get subjected and for a while, and then they repent, call to God, save us, right. and God would always send a judge to deliver them. It's just one time after another. Now, how long did the book of Judges, the time period, actually last? It's like,
well,
it was like, I mean, how many years was it? It was quite a while. It was like 400 years.
It was.
Wasn't it?
I can't remember off the top of my head. We're probably talking about 5 centuries, something like that.
Okay. So, this is a long period of time.
Right. So, there's a lot of judges in that time period.
I mean, just think about here in America, the debauchery and sin that's crept into our world in just the last 30 years. Could you imagine how bad we could get if we have been here for 500 years with no rulers and nobody in authority, and us just doing whatever's right in our own eyes? Which is basically what people want to do right now. I mean,
right.
And you can see things can escalate so quick. But anyway, I mean, they're not any different than the rest of us. They just
that's the key.
They got it written down.
A human's a human.
So,
well, we better call it.
We're wrapping it up here. Or is there any more you want to do? No, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
There's always more, but we gotta call it here.
So we're gonna do part 2.
Absolutely.
Next or next month, and you guys can hopefully tune in and take a look.
Right. It'll be officially fall for the next episode. That'd be nice.
No, it'll be September 1st.
Oh, you're right. It's like later September.
Yeah.
I think September. I think fall, but you're right. It's later September. So not quite. It's getting excited there for no reason.
Yeah. All right.
All right. We'll talk to you later.